The HOA built 18 condos on my inherited land, then handed me an eviction notice for the only home I'd ever known. I let them pour every foundation, drive every nail, smile for their grand opening photos, before I walked into court with a 50-year-old deed that made every single one of those condos mine. It started with a sound, a low grinding growl that shook the coffee in my mug one quiet morning. Out here, it's supposed to be birds in the oak tree wind through the pines, maybe a truck on the distant highway. But that morning, it was machinery. When I stepped outside, the old fence my father and I built half a century ago was gone. Posts ripped out, wire curled in the dirt like a dead snake. A woman in spotless designer boots was standing there with a clipboard. She had that smile people use when they've already decided they're in charge. "Can I help you?" she asked. I told her she was on private property. She barely glanced up. According to the revised plat map, this parcel is now common ground, part of Creekside Commons. I told her she was wrong, that my father bought this land after the war, that I had the deed. She just sighed like I was a child who didn't understand grown-up things. "You'll have 60 days to vacate," she said. Then she turned and walked away while her crew kept tearing up my pasture. I went to their public meeting thinking reason would fix it. I brought tax bills, old survey maps, proof. They laughed. The HOA president, Carol Dobkins, told the room that modern title reform was complex and that digital overlays don't lie. Someone in the crowd called me a greedy old man trying to cash out. I walked out of that clubhouse feeling about an inch tall. That night I stood on my porch watching the sun drop behind the machines parked where my father's fence used to be. For a moment I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I was too old for this fight. But then I looked at the oak tree by the pond, the one where my daughter used to swing, and I heard my dad's voice in my head, "You don't just let someone bulldoze your fence and call it progress." So I started fighting. I hired a local lawyer, laid out every document I had. He frowned at his computer screen and told me their lawyers were from a downtown firm that ate people like me for breakfast. He said the county's digital map showed my property as Phase 3 of the Creekside development. It was like looking at a doctored photo, my home already erased. While he made calls that went nowhere, the construction spread. The noise never stopped. Dust settled on everything, even on my wife's picture on the mantel. They broke my water line, drained the pond, and when I complained, a foreman told me, "Not our problem, sir." I realized I was fighting something much bigger than one bad neighbor. That's when I called Glenn Torres, an old Army buddy who'd become a city engineer. Glenn walked the property, checked the county's overlay against my paper survey, and shook his head. "They're building off a map from a canceled golf course project," he said. Lazy bureaucracy. They never reverted it. He told me the truth wasn't on any computer. It was buried in some dusty archive. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. The next day, a sheriff's deputy delivered an injunction. I was ordered to stay 100 feet away from the lawful development, on my own land. Carol was parked at the end of my driveway, watching, smiling that same dead smile. I wanted to explode, but I just nodded. That night, staring at the hulking bulldozer sitting where my father's garden once grew, I whispered, "This isn't over, Dad." Since I couldn't fight them head-on, I went sideways. Glenn knew an old surveyor named Peterson who owed him a favor. Off the record, Peterson dug through historical plats and found a reference to an iron marker northwest corner near the birch trees. If that pin was still there, the whole HOA map was a lie. We went out after dark with a metal locator. An hour of sweeping leaves and dirt, then clink. A rusted iron pin with a chiseled letter M. Proof. But proof needs paper. Back home, I remembered my father's footlocker in the attic. Inside, beneath uniforms and letters, was a manila envelope labeled Property. And there it was, the notarized deed from 1971 county seal, intact. Next morning, I went to the courthouse basement, flipped open the old plat book, and found the matching entry. Untouched. Filed. Legal. They hadn't stolen my land they'd built on a digital illusion. Sitting there under the buzzing fluorescent light, I realized stopping them wasn't enough. They needed to finish their monument to arrogance, so the fall would hurt. So I put the deed back, said nothing, and let them build. Through the summer, condos rose like mushrooms. I played the beaten old man, left coolers of water for the workers, chatted, took photos. One foreman let slip that the bank was nervous title insurance issues. That confirmed it. They didn't even own the dirt. I went to see Judge Arthur Vance, retired but sharp as ever. He read my papers, leaned back and said, "They committed constructive fraud. Build on land you don't own, and you own the consequences." He explained how every contract the builders, the buyers hung from the same rotten branch. All I had to do was cut it. So I waited until the week of their big ribbon cutting. 2 days before, I walked into the clerk's office and filed a quiet title suit with a copy of my deed attached. No press, no speech, just a time bomb stamped with an official seal. The next morning, my phone exploded with calls. Their lawyer, the same man who'd ignored me before, was suddenly polite, desperate even. "Mr. Matt, we can offer a generous settlement. Name your price." I let him run out of breath, then said, "See you in court." And court was packed. Reporters, condo buyers, contractors, all waiting to see the old fool lose. Carol sat up front, makeup flawless, hands shaking. Their lawyer went first, waving a shiny digital map, talking about modernization and progress, calling my claim sentimental. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand with a brown paper bag. Inside was my father's envelope. I unfolded the 1971 deed, the paper yellowed, but the seal still deep in blue. "Your Honor, I said this is the law of this land. It's never been sold, never surrendered." The room went dead quiet. The judge studied it, then looked at their lawyer, who suddenly couldn't meet her eyes. But I wasn't done. I reached back into the bag and pulled out a small digital recorder. "And this," I said, "is the HOA president offering my expert witness a bribe to make that deed disappear." I pressed play. Carol's voice filled the courtroom, cold and unmistakable. "Just make the old deed go away." The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. "Order." The lawyer stammered something about relevance. She silenced him with a look that could cut glass. Then she read her ruling. The original deed stood. The HOA's digital plat was null and void. Every condo built on that land was by law my property. A gasp went through the room. The contractors turned on the HOA reps. The buyers shouted. Carol just sat there, color draining from her face. The judge wasn't finished. She ordered the HOA to pay damages for my destroyed fence, my water line, and months of distress. Then deputies stepped forward. The district attorney had already heard the recording. Carol was cuffed right there in front of everyone, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Click. The sound of handcuffs closing, that was the sound of justice. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood there, feeling the weight of 50 years lift off my shoulders. All the noise, the humiliation, the sleepless nights, it ended with a single piece of paper my father had signed before I was even born. They built their empire on sand, and I buried them with the bedrock beneath my feet. Because no matter how much dirt they move, no matter how many digital maps they draw, you can't bulldoze the truth.